Welcome to the Confessions of a Reluctant Caregiver podcast. We're happy you're here. On the podcast, we're certain that you'll relate to the caregiver stories and find comfort with your honorary sisters. Now, before we start, I want to remind you to go to our website, confessionsofareluctantcaregiver.com, and sign up for our newsletter. It's full of useful information that you can immediately use. Now, let's learn more about today's guest. Hey, ladies. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you guys, Em?
Doing great.
Oh, I love it. I love it when we're together because we're either on a sister call or we're confessing.
Oh.
And, today's a confession day. I love confession days.
We got a good one too. I'm really excited.
Oh my God. Yes, we do. We got a lifer. Like a lifer caregiver. We love Betsy. Betsy's our sister in care. Jay, we are so excited to have Betsy Wurzel with us. And I was just telling Betsy that I was going to butcher her last name because my accent's so good. Wurzel. And so
it's normally 2 syllables, Betsy, but we made it like 10.
We're going to make it like 10, but we love you. You're sister. So Jay, are you going to tell us about Betsy?
I would love to. So Betsy decided to be a caregiver at the age of 4 when her mom had pneumonia. So she may be one of our youngest caregivers so far. Mm-hmm. That led her to work as an LPN. But then, as we say, there is so much more. She married Matthew Sloan in 1980. Their son, Josh, born with cognitive disabilities in 1984, he came along, and she has cared for Matt's mom, her own father, and ultimately Matt, all diagnosed with Alzheimer's in a 10-year period. But Betsy is a hardcore advocate, and she is a force to be reckoned with. Get ready, guys. She created the Kick Alzheimer's Ass movement.
Beep, that was a dirty word, but it doesn't count.
I know, but I love to say it because it is power. She started a radio show called Chatting with Betsy, and she's a Caregiving Visionary Advocate Award winner. Betsy, we are so glad you're here. You look like a little lady when I look at you on YouTube, but you are a force.
She is a force to be reckoned with.
Yes.
So thank you for coming.
Oh, thank you all for having me. I'm going to get a little verklempt here. Pronouncing my name. I was Wurzel growing up, but my younger brother, when he became highfalutin, decided it's Wurzel.
Oh, Wurzel. That's like, I said that with Target with Target.
Either way is fun.
That's funny. I like that your brother became highfalutin. I like that.
So you got 4 years old and you have decided to be a caregiver. And I know that it says at one point you worked as an LPN. Mm-hmm. So kind of that is like a servant heart extraordinaire. Like that's pretty big, Betsy.
Maybe walk us through. I mean, I would normally always tell everybody, I'm like, okay, let's start at the beginning. You were born and then you became a caregiver, but I mean, that's only 4 years. So really kind of like, what was your first, walk us through your caregiving journey? Cause I think potentially you built on it from individual to individual that you supported.
Wow. Yes. I always had a caregiver heart. I think some people are just natural caregivers. And I believe that I am one of them. I was always caregiving from my mom when she had pneumonia at 4 years old to taking care of my younger brother, babysitting, and I wanted to be a nurse. It's kind of funny. I have to laugh. When I was younger, I loved to read, and I would read about Clara Barton, Florence Nightingale, and I wanted to be famous like them.
Wow.
Not famous, but I was on a battlefield, and that was the battlefield of Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
But even nursing, I was caregiving when I couldn't do nursing anymore due to physical problems. I did retail a little bit, but then I worked in a preschool. So it's still caregiving.
Oh, Emily knows that to be a fact. Caregiving at preschool.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I can tell you from my own personal experience, my opinion, I can handle 10 preschoolers better than someone who has Alzheimer's.
Yes, you're so right.
Different. And when my mother-in-law was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in 2000, there wasn't the information. I didn't even hear about it. And I worked in a nursing home when I was a teenager.
Mhm.
Those people probably had some kind of dementia. It wasn't called Alzheimer's. It was called other names.
Yeah.
So there really wasn't the information available. Did I handle her hallucinations or behaviors properly? No, because they didn't have education.
Yeah.
And there's one thing I am like a true advocate about is education for the caregiver. So by the time, my dad was diagnosed, I was able to help my mom. Time Matt was diagnosed, I still didn't know. I didn't know about early onset Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
I didn't go to any groups. So in 2014, when I went on Facebook, went crazy joining support groups to find out I wasn't alone. And I can tell the audience from my own experience, education is the key to less stress. When you are educated about your loved one's diagnosis and what to do about behaviors and hallucinations, it's so much better for you, the caregiver, and for your loved one.
Yeah.
I can't even say that enough.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's jump back just a little
Let's
bit.
jump back to your mom, because that's right, Jay, where it first started?
You were married in 80, of course. And then Josh came along, 84, and he has some cognitive disabilities. But at the time with your mother-in-law, you cared for her for about 5 years. But you have a 16-year-old at that diagnosis. So you're married, you have a teenager, but you guys move in, or she moves in with you. Is that right, Betsy?
We moved in with her because they were selling our duplex that we were living in.
Mm-hmm.
I have intuitions. I'm an empath. And I said to Matt before we moved in, I believe your mother's going to need us.
Wow.
To live with her.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it was only supposed to be for a year, but it was 5 years. And it was really a difficult time. I mean, Josh is great. Josh is a blessing. He's a true caregiver. He understood more about Alzheimer's than so-called intelligent people.
Well, and let's make sure we understand, because we got a bunch of names we threw around. So Josh is your son, right?
Yeah.
And Matt is your husband.
Right.
And you had moved in with your mother-in-law.
Right.
And so that makes sense. And so did Josh, I want to touch on Josh just for a little bit. Josh, you said had developmental disabilities. Were they pretty severe where you had to provide a lot, or they were mild developmental disabilities?
They were mild. Actually, that's how I became an advocate.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody, the doctors did not believe me, my concerns.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an overprotective mother.
Yeah.
Josh was lazy. And that's the thing, too, that I became an advocate. You have to speak up for those who can't.
Yep.
Those who won't. You have to advocate for yourself if you yourself have a problem, which I had to do. But I had to advocate for Josh with the school system. And knowledge is power, folks. When I got to become more knowledgeable, I knew how to fight for Josh, to stand up for him. And when Josh was going to be graduating 8th grade, going into high school, I had already joined a support group. I found out about private special education schools.
Right.
And I said to the IEP team, Josh is not going to a local high school. Over my dead body, is he going there? This is where I want him to go. This is the school that has what he needs. And if you do not allow him to go, I will sue you. Now, they didn't know I didn't have a lawyer.
Oh, it doesn't matter, girl, because I'm going to tell you, Betsy, for those of you who don't know or have younger children, you haven't dealt with IEPs, which is an individualized education plan that the schools are responsible for writing with children who have identified disabilities. There are all kinds of federal protections, and Betsy, you would have been given an attorney. The feds say your son has a right to free and public education. And, that's the sad part, Betsy, is we hear for our guests that come on and talk about their children who have had disabilities, it is always the same thing. The schools fight them for services. And I just don't understand that. And so I know you're a fierce advocate. You mamas I'm always like, watch out for the mamas because they will advocate for their children.
I'm truly a mama bear. I associate myself with a mama bear, very protective. And that was with my family also. You know, you do not disrespect me or my family. And that's why, and this will be, you know, down the road when dealing with the hospice from hell team that we had, they knew real quick, I'm not your meek, quiet housewife. Do not disrespect what I am saying about my loved one.
So I think you have to say that. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, you guys moved in. I hear you guys saying that. So Josh is incredibly supportive. He's like but how did Matt take this? Because I know there's a lot of emotion there. It's his mom. How is he dealing with this?
Not well, and it really affected our marriage. Sad to say, because I knew his mom had a problem, and she told me because Matt's grandmother had Alzheimer's.
Really? Okay.
And so, mom, her name was Mary, would say, Betsy, I'm getting like my mom, but don't tell Matt.
Oh gosh.
Then she started having like weird behaviors, like yelling at me for no reason and going off the wall. And I said, Matt, you need to take your mom to a neurologist. He goes, well, you take her. And I said, well, yeah, I could take her, but you're a power of attorney. You need to get involved. And we would go round and round. And he didn't want to see when she was even progressing that she needed more help. Until, don't mean to be graphic, but it took this. Matt went out food shopping for her, and she had pooped in the kitchen. Just dropped her pants and pooped. I said, Matt, your mother just pooped in the kitchen. She's got to go to a facility. And he's like, no, she didn't. I said, well, you know what? Something will be waiting for you when you get home.
You go, Betsy. Yeah, sometimes it does take that wake up call. I know we had a couple of calls with mom, and Emily was like, you guys aren't here and you don't see it. And
until you fully experience, then you're like, yes, there's an issue.
And it took us, I think, Emily going and doing the respite for that, for us to say, wait a minute, Emily is, maybe we were avoiding it. Maybe we didn't see mom had progressed.
And here's the thing. I don't think it was, Betsy, we didn't believe Emily. I think it's that we didn't want to believe.
I think there was a denial there.
Difference. I think it's denial versus just, oh, you're being a big fat liar.
No, it was denial. Like, oh, maybe that's, I think there's a lot of that. We didn't want to accept it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Do you think though that, and speaking for Matt, Betsy, do you think that there was fear because of acceptance of it because his grandmother had it and now his mom would get it and that he himself potentially would get it? Do you think there's also that fear too?
You know what? It's funny that you asked that because he didn't think that, but Matt always said, because his dad died at 62 or 63, that the men in his family die young and he won't make it to retirement. And again, with my intuition, I said, and I didn't know about early onset back then. I said, Matt, I want to take you to a neurologist when you're 60 because I believe you're going to get this young.
Oh, yeah.
Never knowing at that time you could get it really at any age.
Yeah.
I think I think that's such an important comment because, before we got connected to the caregiver community, we were like you. Like, I mean, and you're years way before us. And I remember JJ and Emily and I, we're not seeing ourselves as caregivers. We're just like, okay. And, we're dealing with mom's Parkinson's. We're trying to learn about it. We don't see ourselves that way. And then it's like, there's not enough information, but we, as a society, you don't hear about Alzheimer's, dementia. It's, now, what we hear about it right now, because they just passed a huge medication to try to impact Alzheimer's. It's the pharmaceutical company that I see all the commercials for these new meds, but I didn't see Alzheimer's. Jay, I don't know about you. I never saw it beforehand. Then we get into the caregiver community. We had no clue how prevalent it was.
Yeah, I think Betsy, because you were 20, your first diagnosis, and you knew about it with that, your husband's grandmother, but I think I always thought it was older people, but it was the same thing with Parkinson's. And our mom at 48, but I always thought dementia and Alzheimer's that hit in a nursing home. It was like, no,
like 70s, 80s,
which now doesn't seem that old. I got to tell you, but
I know, right? Somebody's having a birthday, Betsy.
So she lost that battle with Alzheimer's, and for other whatever reasons, but in 5 years. But then you got 5 years there. And then, in less than 10 years, you have 3 diagnoses with Alzheimer's. So who's next in this chain of Alzheimer's, and what kind of got you there? How'd you realize it?
My dad was also diagnosed. And unfortunately, he fell at home, fractured his hip, and had to be placed.
Yeah.
And I told my mom, I think the open heart surgery really affected my dad.
Yeah.
Mental state. And my dad was diabetic and he had COPD and, maybe he had vascular dementia. Maybe he had mixed, I don't know, but he definitely had it. And I supported my mom, telling her about support groups. And I encouraged her to place my dad after he fractured his hip. I said, you're not going to be able to take care of him at home. And of course, I'm the black sheep of the family because I'm outspoken. And of course, I was the bully,
So here's the question.
Wait,
go ahead, do it, Natalie. Ask it.
Yeah,
Emily, you ask it.
Emily.
Betsy, what is your birth order?
The middle.
Yes. Yes. I knew you were a kindred soul, because if you say you're the black sheep and the bully, it's me. Okay, for those who can't see, it's Natalie.
Yeah, she.
Yes.
That's funny. Yeah, I'm 3 out of 4.
Yeah. So you're pushing your mom then. You're saying but you're also saying you're almost saying it's okay, because you had to make that decision also with your mother-in-law at some point that she's going to need additional care that you can't provide. The same thing you had to do with Matt, that you had to tell Matt your mom needs more. So you did that for your mom as well, was kind of, you gotta get more, Mom. You got to also give yourself a break. How old were your parents at that time?
My dad, he was 88 when he died. Yeah. So I'm going to say he was, I'm trying to do my math here real quick. He was in his early 80s.
Yeah. Which you don't want to say fits kind of a traditional mold, but that's kind of what you say. You're like, he has dementia and Alzheimer's. And so people they're like, okay.
But how old was your mother-in-law?
Oh, my mother-in-law, she was in her 80s.
Okay, she was in her 80s. Okay.
Well, your mom was taking care of your dad at that age, as far as with those type of ailments. She was still, because I'm assuming she's maybe around that same age. She was doing
70s. And I said, Ma, you can't handle it.
Yeah.
My dad was a big, heavy guy.
Yeah.
I said, you're not going to be able to handle it. And exactly what I told you would happen, that help is not going to be reliable. He's going to get up during the night. And she, make up all these excuses. And my sister said, Betsy, let Mom take Dad at home. Let her see that she can't do it. And then she could place him. I didn't realize that she had to do that because my mom placed her mom and felt tremendous guilt.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Caregivers have guilt about something, and we could do a whole different show on that, right?
Yeah.
Yes, the guilt.
That's a preach, me and Emily. So we're like, tell him.
Yeah. So she had to see for herself. And I know she still felt guilty about putting my dad in a nursing home. Yeah. And I can't wrap my head, ladies, about why adult children do not support their parents and getting the help and saying, you know what, Mom or Dad, we think we should talk placement here. Why are they worried about their inheritance? I got news for you folks. You're not entitled to your parents' money. That's their money they earned. Let them do what they want with it. They don't owe you anything. They gave you shelter and stuff growing up. They don't owe you anything.
Well, and I would say that to the parents. you don't owe your children anything, to be honest with you. I mean, I hate to say that in the sense of, I know that there are a lot of people, like my husband's mom, she would go without getting enough food, or she would not get medicine to ensure her life insurance plan for her sons was paid so that when she passed, they had something to have. And they would be like, Mom, and she wouldn't tell them, but we knew later that she was not taking care of herself to try to leave things. And I just want to be like, what, I don't understand that. Like, I just like, you can't keep your money to try to not take care of yourself, because ultimately it's going to cost so much more. And then
we don't have kids, so maybe that's okay. I don't know.
It's definitely a mother's intuition that you always want to take care of your children, even when you're an adult and they're adults, and you always just have that feeling of like, I've got to take care of them. That never leaves.
Yeah. I think you're
Do
right.
you want to pass on a bunch of money, Emily, to your kids? I mean, she's like, wait a minute.
I'm going to pass on like my rubber band.
Emily's like, JJ and Natalie, just pass on to my kids. I'm not passing anything on to them.
Exactly.
So, Betsy, let me ask you this about kind of the caregiving piece, because we didn't get into some of the details of it, because we're kind of talking high level, but, you lived with your mother-in-law. And so were you, as especially the female role, okay, did you do the traditional role responsible? Did you have to do were you the lead on taking the cooking and the cleaning and going? I mean, I heard you say that Matt went and did grocery shopping, and then you've had direct live-in, because I'm assuming you were the primary support for your mother-in-law.
Yes.
Okay.
Did you work, or no, you were not work? You were like, I need to do this 24/7. At
that time, I was working on weekends, but then I had foot surgery and then I didn't work. So that worked out well. And then
foot surgery was a great benefit.
It happens.
And then you transitioned into being a long, kind of a long distance, were you local to your mom, or would your mom live farther away?
My mom lived far for me.
Yeah.
But when I told my mom, as soon as my father was put on medication, I said, Mom, you have to go to a lawyer, an elder lawyer, get power of attorney, get a living will made, start protecting your assets. I don't have any. I said, does it matter? Get a living will. You don't want to be running around like a chicken with your head cut off in case you had to place daddy. She didn't listen. Guess what happened? She ran around crazy getting that power of attorney when she had to place my father.
Yeah.
Wow.
She didn't listen to me.
This goes back to your education speech. Like, you're like, get educated, learn how to do this.
Well, and we remember, Betsy, what it was like to place our mom back in March. And we were up to the last minute of when we had to have her placed, because we were transitioning out of the apartment, and we didn't realize that placing our mom in skilled nursing had a lot more steps than we realized, with having to have certain types of history and physical. And if the right words aren't on the history and physical, which is admit to the facility, they left that off at our primary care physician. And then they were like, well, we can't admit her without these exact words, admit to skilled nursing. And I'm like, I'm sorry, what? And so JJ we had gone to take our mom to place her. And that was the last day we were in our house. And they were like, okay, because we're having to move out. And then it was, oh, okay, but we're only open till this time. And it was just a mess and so stressful. So you saying, get the living will, get these things to make it easier, because there's enough stress associated with a transition, whether it's to assisted living or to skilled nursing or rehab. There are things you can do in advance to make the process less, I don't want to say easier, but less stressful.
Exactly. And, I don't mean to be morbid here. I'm just very real.
Yeah.
You have to pre-plan a funeral. And if someone's going into a facility, they really want you to do that.
Yeah, they do.
I started to pre-plan Matt's, and I'm glad I did.
Yeah.
So let's transition right into Matt, because you took care of you were a long distance caregiver and supporting your dad, and then ultimately your mom. But when did Matt get diagnosed? He got diagnosed with Alzheimer's, correct? Or when did you start seeing it?
2010.
Okay.
And that was a fight. Was that an easy diagnosis? Because I think that was not easy.
Had a fight. Yeah,
everything's a fight.
How old was he, Betsy? Because I know he said that was early onset.
Matt was 56.
Mm.
And looking back, I believe he had it a good year or two before he was diagnosed.
And what did we say that was a fight? So what was the answer from the doctors initially? Because that was like your first, somebody is going to listen to me.
This is really interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know if Matt's company doctor saw him in person or just talked to him on the phone. She suspected dementia without even seeing any medical, clinical reports.
Yeah.
She suspected because of what was going on at work.
Yeah.
And the doctors kept telling me, he's too young. He's too young. Even the neuropsychologist who back in 2010, obviously I didn't know what I know now. She had the nerve, and I've heard this from many caregivers, blaming the patient, having the nerve to say he can't possibly be that bad. He can't. He's got a deep psychological problem. He wasn't compliant in testing. I've heard this from interviewing, a guest on my show, where they blame the patient.
So what was his symptoms? What was his symptoms, if you don't mind me asking? I mean, I like that, if you don't mind me asking. This is my politeness.
It was interesting. I happened to be in the hospital for 2 weeks in November of 2009. Mm-hmm. And Matt didn't know how to write out a check. Josh told me Matt didn't know how to order at McDonald's, and that he was having trouble at work. And I had scheduled an appointment. So Matt was in the hospital the month after me, and he was having memory problems. He didn't remember that doctor came to see him. I told his primary, Matt's having memory problems. He blew me off. Mm-hmm. Matt didn't know his way around town. Matt, it was really weird. They were adding a lane on a major road where we live. Now, Matt lived in this area his whole life. Adding a left-hand lane confused him for some reason. I couldn't figure out why. But that really threw him way off. He didn't know where the recyclables were. And unknown to me, I didn't know all the difficulties he was having at work. But I did see a difference with him driving. He was driving between two lanes, sometimes not seeing people or stop signs.
Wow.
I thank God nobody was hurt. It was scary.
Wow.
As a matter of fact, Matt's situation, I was the first spouse they ever had on a disability hearing because they knew Matt couldn't remember.
Hey ladies, I need to interrupt for just a second to share about the Sisterhood membership. It's basically a sale every day, and the best part, it's free. Here's the details. We're partnering with our friends at Benefit Hub and other care partners to save you money. With over 200,000 participating companies across the U.S. and abroad, you'll find discounts at your favorite local stores, huge savings on vacations, amazing deals on home, auto, and supplemental insurances, and everything in between. Go to confessionsofareluctantcaregiver.com to sign up, and then definitely tell your friends about it. They can join too. Trust me, there's a discount for everyone. And don't forget, it's free. Okay, back to confessing. Matt is diagnosed at 56. And so you said a disability hearing. So did he ultimately, how old was he? Because I'm assuming he was deemed, met qualifications to be disabled. And because of that, because he's young, he's not retired. I mean, he's not got Medicare. He's not 65 at this point. He's not even early. And so how old was he? This is interesting. what was getting him disability like for you guys?
It was really easy.
Okay, that's a blessing.
Mhm.
Yeah. Because we had documentation up to the wazoo
Right.
from his work doctor, from his primary, from the neurologist. And when we went to Social Security with the documentation, the lady who did the intake, her dad died from early onset Alzheimer's. And she said, I'm putting that on the fast track. I know what it's like.
That's a blessing.
Yes.
We're all like blessing. So let me ask you this. How old was Matt when he had disability, when he got qualified for it?
He was 56.
He was 56. So how did this impact your relationship?
Well, at first I was really mad that he didn't tell me everything going on at work.
Yeah.
And I, found out, I learned, education again. He didn't remember from the time he left work till he got home. He didn't remember what went on.
Wow.
And so it wasn't that he wasn't telling me, he forgot.
Wow.
And I was resentful in a way because I knew Matt wouldn't take care of me. If I had
support you, Betsy.
I mean, because when I had surgeries, Matt he wasn't helpful.
So
Josh is the caregiver in the family.
I'm like, Josh is the caregiver.
Yeah, and it was rough. And then I started to put myself in Matt's place. Nobody wants to get Alzheimer's or any other dementia. I was eventually going to have my freedom. Matt never was going to have his freedom back.
Oh, wow, Betsy. That's
pathetic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then I learned such a deep, unconditional love. I get emotional that I never had before. And I say that dementia robs the brain, but it cannot ever rob the heart of love. The heart knows love. And
you got us.
Matt knew we loved him. And even though he called me Booby for some reason, but he called Josh. Sometimes he got us confused, but he knew who we were. Mm-hmm. And love is a very powerful emotion. And I know that Matt hurt us when he was dying.
Yeah.
And I believe that I was drummed as a nurse in a nursing school. Caring is the last sense to go. And I believe God created us that way. So our loved ones could tell us that they love the person and the person can hear that we love them. And it's so important to talk to your loved one, even if they can't talk. They hear you. They know. They feel the love. Keep talking to them. Keep loving up on them. They know. People say, oh, why should I visit them? They don't know who I am. But you know who they are. They know your love. They may not remember your name. They know your voice. I believe they truly know your voice.
I agree with that, Betsy, because our memories are you've got long-term memories, and I totally agree with you. Even if they can't recognize you, there's something comforting there. And I think there is comfort. It's why they tell people to talk to people who are in comas. It's why they tell people, because it comes through, it permeates through. And I think a lot of people may say, well, why visit? It's less about the person they love and more about them and the discomfort that it creates for them. And we have to be okay with being uncomfortable.
Yes.
So Betsy, you all lost Matt in 2020, but in there, you created a movement. You created this amazing thing called Kick Alzheimer's Ass, which I love. So in all of this this learning and all of this inspiration? Because you say everything you do, you promised Matt that you would continue this mission. So even in all this heartache, knowing that you're losing your husband, you got this strength. Like you said, I'm going forward. Tell me about that. Tell me about the advocacy and tell me about how that got there, because you took this and ran.
I did get for come. I'll just show a picture of Matt, so you can see that.
Yeah.
Matt was the reason why I went in my car to start doing videos. I think it's funny now because I see people doing videos in their car.
Yeah.
And I used to do it in my car, and I would tell the world how I felt. I would take Matt's picture and I'd say, you know what? This is the new face of Alzheimer's. You can get it at any age. And I try to dispel the myths, and I talk about caregiving. And being a Jersey gal, my father's daughter, I'm very outspoken.
No. Take it up. No. Which is clearly why we align with you.
and very blunt. And I would send out to different groups I belonged to, and I didn't think I would get a response.
Mm-hmm.
Now, who's going to listen to me? No one listens to me. And eventually, Jeannie White, who's station manager, Pastoral Talk Radio, saw one of my videos and asked me to interview on her show. And then when she asked me to speak weekly on her show, I think it was the Connect show she had at the time, I was stunned. I said, yeah, I could talk, but I'm not a professional speaker by any means. And she said, that's okay. So it was really hard at that time in 2018 to get caregivers to speak about their story. They didn't want to speak up. And in 2019, I created a hashtag Kick Alzheimer's Ass movement. I started hashtagging. And my friend Lori, who I met in a group, whose sister was dying at the time, she said, Betsy, you have to start this group. I said, no, I'll do it after Matt dies. No, you have to start it now. I said, I'm not a leader. I'm not going to lead a group. And so I did. And people say, well, why do you call it that? And I said, because either I was going to kick Alzheimer's ass or it was going to kick mine. And I was at a very dark spot where I was thinking, how are the railroad tracks at work? How do they feel in the winter versus the summer? I was, and not that I was suicidal. I don't know why I was getting these thoughts. It scared me. And I said, I got to get out of this hole and never go back in it. And I highly recommend counseling. I'm a big mental health advocate. It's okay to go for help. It's not a sign of weakness. And neither is crying, which I do a lot.
You're good.
Crying
You're
is
good
the body's response. That's so therapeutic. There is nothing like a good snot fest cry. I mean, honestly, Betsy, there are times when Jason was diagnosed and I just kept going. And I never wanted him to see me upset. I had to be strong. And there was one day that I sat in here in my office, and it was like 9:30 in the morning. And I just started just bawling, crying. And I tried to be quiet because Jason was in the other room. And then he later came in and said, what's wrong? And I was like, I didn't even know how to explain it, because then I felt guilty because I felt selfish for crying. I felt selfish for feeling bad for my situation and what was going on. And the reality is I don't have to feel bad for that. There's nothing wrong with acknowledging how you're feeling and thinking that it's unfair that this happened to me. Why did this happen to me after everything? Because it's normal. It's normal to feel that way. So Betsy, when you said, did Matt live with you the whole time, or did you ultimately, because I don't recall, did you have to place him in a facility?
We placed Matt up in the hospice unit.
Okay.
His last week of life.
Wow.
So
you cared for him the entire 10 years.
Yeah.
So you called that, I heard though in the beginning, I heard the hospice from hell.
Hell.
So yeah, Emily heard that too. Tell me, because tell me what happened there, because hospice is it is an important, if you're able to get to hospice, because they do so much to comfort those in those last days.
Yeah.
Tell me what happened there, because you won, obviously.
Yeah, they're supposed to bring comfort. Mine was unusual, and that's why I highly recommend interviewing ahead of time.
Preparation and education.
Yes, and if you can afford it, hire someone to help you navigate the process.
Because they're out there, correct, Betsy?
Or care consultants.
Yeah. Yes, if you can, afford it. I wish I did that. That's why I'm so passionate about telling people about resources I wish I knew about. But we went with the local hospice at a hospital that the doctor recommended.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a nightmare. They did not believe me that Matt was agitated, that the medicine wasn't working. The social worker was very nasty and came to my house and said, "What's the problem? Nobody calls up hospice as much as you."
She needed another job, Betsy. That beagle needed another job, because we're not going to say the BITCH, but that beagle needed another job, because hospice is not like that. I know a lot of hospice people, so I just want to qualify that. You had sounds like a terrible experience.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
To tell someone you're calling too much? Really?
No.
Where's the empathy?
Yeah.
I put it right in her place. Let me tell you.
I know you did, girl.
Well, there you go.
Put her right in her place.
There you go. There goes Betsy. She's like right in her place. So, go ahead.
I'm not going to jail for anybody, but I really wanted to smack the crap out of her.
But Betsy, that's advocacy, and that's just standing your ground, because at the core of everything, you knew Matt, and you knew your father, you knew your mother-in-law, you knew because you knew them. You weren't an outsider with just medical education. You weren't that person. More than anybody, the neurologist can tell us what's going on with mom, but Emily was there. She's boots on the ground, and she could say, nope, that's not what it was. I appreciate.
Are the experts in the patient.
You are. And wow is all I can say. You were like, not happening.
I called that social worker off in the hospital. I told her off and nicely, I told her, you do not talk to me that way. I am not stupid. So don't talk to me like I'm stupid. I said, I worked as a nurse. I know how to get medication. I'm telling you, it's not working. He's dying. You don't believe me. She actually had the nerve to tell me, as I told her, Matt said, as plain as day, I have a headache. Matt never complains. And he had the nerve to say he can't have a headache. I said, why not? Who are you to say he can't have a headache? Do you know what a dying brain feels like? Nobody does.
Well, and what does it even matter? I mean, our grandmother
true.
was in residential hospice, and we had such an amazing experience with that. Instead of her passing in the hospital, we went in Knoxville. They had a residential hospice, and it was never a question about the medicine.
It was
like when she moaned or whatever, if they thought she needs a little bit more medicine. And by the time she passed, she had enough. They said that she had enough pain medication in her body to tranquilize an elephant. And because she had, her cancer was so bad. And so that's what it's meant to be. You're right. Hospice and palliative care is about comfort.
Yeah.
Comfort, not, we are overdosing them in meds. We're all guaranteed to die.
Betsy, there are some things. So that is a recommendation. We talk about education. And I never would have thought about that. Interview your hospice.
I've never thought that either.
Yeah, I haven't either. But you said as well. So that preparation for power of attorney, living will, all of those things. I'm assuming that you and Matt, because of that experience, you all were prepared for that. You said, as far as planning funerals, all of your previous experience, did that help you make those steps so that it was a little bit easier for you and Matt?
It was, because when Matt died, they just had to call the funeral home. And Matt died on New Year's Day.
Yeah.
Different clump again.
Yeah, I understand.
So that, I believe, I know this might sound crazy, Matt's last gift to me, because he died on January 1st, 2020, I was able to claim him for taxes. and was able to get his full Social Security check because he was in hospice dying from Christmas to New Year's.
Yeah.
Well, before Christmas. And I said, Matt, please don't die on Christmas. Josh will always associate that with you dying. So when Christmas passed, I said, okay, Matt, Christmas is over. Thank you for hanging in there. You can go if you want. You can hang in there till January 1st. That would be even better for me.
See, I love Betsy. Betsy has our sense of humor. She's like, you know what, Matt, if you can hang on for me, we've been married for all these years.
Benefits, because honestly, it's costly. Because that's the thing. I can only imagine the cost that you incurred during this time, because Matt's on disability. Matt has a very fixed amount of income. Betsy, were you able to work as well during this time? Or are you a full-time caregiver over the last 10 years?
I did work because I had Josh to help me.
Oh, wow. There you go.
You're superhuman, Betsy.
Yes.
So you are one of the 60% of the 50. You're one of the 60% of 53 million caregivers. You worked, and your husband has extensive, I don't even know the right terminology, but extensive, like end-stage Alzheimer's, and you're working. So this is like me, like putting on my advocate hat for, legislators and being like, we must do more for caregivers. We must have the ability to support more. And so I just
mentally aware, because you said there was that point where you were like, I gotta figure this out. But where are you after all of these years, Betsy? Because if it started in 2000, you really were in a process of Alzheimer's, and you did this for 20 years. So at the end of that time, how did you feel? Because you've been on a long road. Exhausted.
I was so grateful for the pandemic to be able to stay at home.
Really? Silver lining.
It was a silver lining. I was grateful too that Josh, where he worked, they let him not work in the afternoon because he couldn't do the Family Leave Act.
Yeah.
So, and they were very nice working with Josh. And Josh was great. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have been able to have worked. But it took a toll on me. Yeah. And a lot of people don't talk about caregiver post-traumatic stress disorder or injury, if you want to call it that. I had it. I had it even after my mother-in-law, but nobody believed it back then. I was always ahead of my time. And now they are starting to recognize there is caregiver post-traumatic. We need to start talking about this and the realities of what a caregiver goes through during and after caregiving. Yeah. And now you said, you felt you had to be strong. I felt I had to be strong. And it really ticked me off when people would tell Josh and I, when Matt was dying, to be strong. I went off. Do not tell anyone who's seeing a loved one deteriorate and die to be strong. They don't have to be strong. We don't have to be strong 24/7. We're human beings. We're not robots.
Yep.
And have a great relationship with your children. Let them vent to you. And Josh told me, how he felt, and he was able to communicate with me. And that's a whole nother show too. Society doesn't teach us how to grieve.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
People think, oh yeah, get over it. Let me tell you something. In my opinion, you don't get over it. You get through it. The pain changes, but it's always there.
You know what, Betsy, you're right.
And I've integrated my grieving with my living. I honor Matt. This month is his birthday month. Monday is his birthday. People might think I'm crazy. I order a cake. We sing to Matt, happy birthday. We'll go out and celebrate his birthday. Why do people think we have to put our loved ones away? No. And I like to think I'm a trailblazer with that. And I see other people doing it now. Post your anniversary. Post their birthdays. What are you supposed to do? Forget that you spent half your life with someone because they died? No. Get out those anniversary pictures and show them. Celebrate your anniversary.
Oh my gosh, Jay.
I know. Well, and I think about Amy Goyer. We interviewed her, and I think her father also had dementia and Alzheimer's. And what she said is, take every moment and every holiday, St. Patrick's Day, anything, Secretary's Day, anything you can, and celebrate while they're here. Celebrate everything. But I love that because, losing our dad and just celebrate everything, just the little stuff. But those days, like you said, those are hard. You said the holidays are hard, but it's also a good time to remember. It's a good time to remember.
I let this. Okay, so I'm going to tell you, we are at the very end of our time.
Yeah.
And so Betsy, I want you to come back. I feel like there's so much more to say. We did not get to our sister questions, but I think the nuggets of wisdom that you gave us
fantastic.
Are such a blessing that it was worth it. And to bypass our sister questions, because we love to have fun, but this is so good. I think you gave us so much information to use going forward. So whether you are a caregiver, have been a caregiver, or will be a caregiver, or will be cared for, but we're all there. We're all there. This is for you. And I think, Betsy, I can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing your story. We're going to have you come back because we're going to get those sister questions in, but we're going to have you come back. And I'm going to say, on behalf of the sisters and I, we love you. And thank you so much for giving so much of yourself. And until I'm going to close this out, ladies, any last sec?
All the ways to contact Betsy are going to be in our show notes, and you're going to find her.
Oh, and you got to listen to her show, and we're going to be on her show in December. So we will be posting about Betsy. We will be posting when we're on the show. I cannot wait. So guys, thanks so much for listening into today's episode. And until the next time when we confess again, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, friends, that's a wrap on this week's confession. Again, thank you so much for listening. But before you go, please take a moment to leave us a review and tell your friends about the Confessions podcast. Don't forget to visit our website to sign up for our newsletter. You'll also find a video recording of all of our episodes on the Confessions website and our YouTube channel. Don't worry, all the details are included in the show notes below. We'll see you next Tuesday when we come together to confess again. Till then, take care of you. Okay, let's talk disclaimers. You may be surprised to find out, but we are not medical professionals and are not providing any medical advice. If you have any medical questions, we recommend that you talk with a medical professional of your choice. As always, my sisters and I at Confessions of a Reluctant Caregiver have taken care in selecting the speakers, but the opinions of our speakers are theirs alone. The views and opinions stated in this podcast are solely those of the contributors and not necessarily those of our distributors or hosting company. This podcast is copyrighted and no part can be reproduced without the express written consent of the Sisterhood of Care, LLC. Thank you for listening to the Confessions of a Reluctant Caregiver podcast.